Thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you Ari for agreeing to do this with me. So we met during Climate Week, and you were talking about how you found your customer journey and how you found product market fit, and that immediately kind of was impressive. And it was impressive because in an environment where founders kind of sit in a corner and assume that there's a problem and start breathing, your approach was refreshingly impressive and inspiring. So that is why we are here. And before we get started, I want to also establish what product market fit is, because I spoke to a few founders last year and they were asking me, okay, define product market fit, because it is different for every sector. Apparently, that's not how I looked at it, but maybe we can get started with that. Can you define product market fit?
You like the dictionary definition? Well, first of all, hello. Is my mic working? You can.
Oh, we didn't even do
Honestly,
introductions. But
yeah, I was gonna say.
yes, sorry.
It works. We're all like in a very small room, so maybe we don't need a mic.
Oh,
Right? Unless the camera needs to hear me.
no, I think it picks up. Yeah.
Great. Hello. This is more natural anyway. Welcome. Thank you for coming. We had a nice intimate group. I wouldn't call it a small group, but intimate group tonight. So it's cool to have some folks who are interested to chat about product market fit. So I know when I'm talking to you, like, let's do a quick survey. Like, who's a founder or aspiring founder? Most. Half. Okay. Who is like working at a small startup? Right. People who didn't raise your hand. What's your deal? Curious? Speak up. Yeah, I want to hear from the audience.
Product manager, so product market fit.
That's your deal. Are you in a FANG company, or is it somewhere in between?
I'm currently working myself.
Whoa, so it's a startup.
Yeah, that's why I would identify as founder or
Got it. Anyone else?
Yeah, I work as product manager too, but I'm trying to break into the space and the more I understand about the problems that are out there and how you guys figure it out, it helps me learn about the space.
Nice. And
Yeah, I'm a freelance writer, and so I have I do marketing, and so it's kind of this is something I'm interested in.
yeah, I mean, I think so. The question was, what is product market fit? And I mean, I don't know what the dictionary definition of it is, but as a founder or someone who's just trying to invent a thing and get people to consume it, the idea is, I think, how do you build something that people not are just willing to use, but are willing to pay for? And that's like the big part. There are certain, obviously, markets in the nonprofit space where it's different. But for most of us, it's like, I want to do something and I want to make it appealing enough for some markets, which you can define, will pay for it. At the broadest level, that's kind of how I would define it. And as you zoom into the climate space, which I assume most of us are in climate, or like at least want to be in climate. I was talking to some folks earlier about this, but the type of customers you have, the type of markets you have in the climate space are not the type of customers you have if you're developing an app, you're developing an AI agent, right? Like very different markets. So how do you attack, how do you define what a product should be for those particular markets? I think is a discussion worth having. And I'm not going to claim to know the answers. I don't have my own journey, but I think it's a good discussion to have, especially since we have a small group here. We can actually probably share from each other on this one. Does that answer the question? Did I get it?
Perfect. Yes, that's great. And by the way, I'm Lakshmi. I didn't introduce myself because I feel like I know most of you. But for those of you who do not know me, I am an environmental engineer. I worked I've had a very non-linear career in 7 sectors across 4 countries as a product program person, founder. Last year as an operator. I took a concept to early stage traction. Now they have product market fit and some revenue. And I did that within a couple of months of joining the team. So that kind of landed me an opportunity to start and run a climate tech accelerator in partnership with 90. But the funding fell through, but I'm still kind of doing all these events, which were part of the go-to-market strategy for the accelerator. So that's me. And Ari, you know.
In case you don't know me, I'm Arif. I'm the co-founder and CTO at Glacier. At Glacier, we make robotics and AI systems for the recycling industry. Happy to talk at length about that one. I think what's relevant here for me and like why is it that I feel that I am, an expert enough to talk about product market fit. I mean, one maybe satisfying fact is that I founded Glacier in 2019. I had the idea for it late 2018, and the two products I wanted to build late 2018, we have not pivoted at all from those. We're building the exact same thing, and we're still selling exactly the same thing. So something in there worked, and maybe that's what we'll organize.
So I grew up in India. I wanted to give some advice. So back in the day, my grandparents were farmers, and my uncles I would visit them during summer holidays. And then before industrialization, not too much industrialization, there was a lot of making. Like people would make things with their hands. So my uncles would make something, and then if I said no, I want to customize it, there was this back and forth or feedback. And if they were teaching me something, again, it was like they would ask me how's it coming along? Maybe you could do it this way or that way. So that feedback loop was constant. Whether I was learning from them or they were learning, they were customizing it for me. So I took that all along the way throughout my life until now. So for me, this feedback loop with stakeholders and customers was very intuitive. But when I came to Silicon Valley last year, I found that not many founders actually talk to the customers, which is where you are so different. Could you talk to us about how you kind of ran it out to your customers and how that journey started?
Yeah, I'm actually going to start one step earlier and then get to this. I've been in San Francisco for 12 years now. Being in San Francisco, we all know founders. We all see founders start things. I think one of the things that, as I was thinking about starting my own company, I saw happen too much was the founder who saw some use case in there. There's two key things that. Number one, they see some use case in there, and they're like, it'd be so much cooler if I had like a app that could sort my shoes for me. And they're like, oh, that would be cool. Let me see if I can build that. Or they say, oh wow, it's so cool that like LLMs can do this. If I layered this on top, that'd be really cool too. That might be useful for someone. Those are the two ways I saw so many founder friends of mine start companies, and they all pivoted. They all went different directions. Because when you start like that, you're technology focused. You're going to like solutions first thinking, and you're not actually going to find that market fit. Maybe you'll get lucky, and a lot of founders do get lucky, and they invent some cool technology and they stumble into or they maneuver their way to some product market fit. But the way I did it was very different because I was aware of so many founders struggling with that. I said, let me see if I can do this the other way around. So my journey, I was a software engineer at Facebook before Glacier. It was February of 2018. I told my manager, hey, I'm going to quit by the end of the year. I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but I'm going to start my own thing, and I'll stick around until then. But like, be aware, I could quit at any moment now. And then I went to the climate space. I started looking around the climate space. I knew I wanted to have impact in the climate space. The question was what? Because if you're going to start a company, it's a minimum 10-year journey if it goes well. And so I'm not going to commit myself to something that I don't think is worth committing to for 10 years. So it was a really patient journey there. I spent 8 months while at Facebook, spending my evenings, my lunch breaks, like whatever, doing the research to actually explore this place. I didn't name it this at the time, but I was looking at the time for product market fit. But I was also looking for technology market fit and a couple other things. So the way to answer your question, I approached the challenge of like, what do I do? I had an objective function. I was to create impact in sustainability. There are many, many ways to do that. You can go onto things like Drawdown, et cetera, and find what the problems are that need attacking. You can maybe start to optimize, like this one is a really big GHG emission impact. This one has a really big pollution impact, whatever. But the challenge is, okay, you find a cool space. How do you find the right thing to do in that space? Every industry that's out there is an industry. It's full of businesses that have been operating for a while, especially in the climate space. You're going to be dealing with people who do power, construction, cycling, water, all of this stuff. It's like legacy industries, old players. So how do you solve their problems? How do you give them something that they're actually willing to pay for? That was the challenge I set out to solve. So to do that, I mean, it's obvious, it's research, talk to people. As a founder, it's kind of fun. You get to like I don't know. I mean, hopefully everyone in this room is like comfortable doing this. But I was just like calling up like literally like PG&E and like trying to find like someone who could like talk to me about PG&E's woes. And you know, you have your network, you meet people at 9-0, you work your way and find the right people to talk to. My journey specifically, I took with me 3 major checkboxes I was trying to check for the right problem. Checkbox number 1 was wedding impact with business. I wanted to find a solution that, as it made more money, it made more climate impact. I like to poke fun at Patagonia as like the counterexample of this. They do great things for the climate, but their business model has nothing to do with the climate. If some PE fund took over and was like, I'm just gonna like squeeze this company for the money, they would just like be Banana Republic. Right? They'd just be a clothing company. They're doing great. I love them, but that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to assume that VC would like take over my company and like squeeze us for cash, and as they did it, we would generate more impact. That was thing number 1 I wanted to find. Business model aligned with climate impact. Number 2, and keep in mind this was back in 2018, so the conversation shifted, but I wanted to ride the tide of AI. As a software engineer, I was sitting there watching AI become more and more accessible. I was like, I have a feeling this is going to be a big thing. That one I kind of nailed. Thing number 3, and this is the most important one, I didn't want to build something and then try to sell it. I wanted to find something people would buy that didn't exist and then build it. So I'll give you an example.
Could you say that again? Sorry.
I didn't want to build something and then try to sell it. I wanted to find something that people would buy that didn't exist, and I wanted to conjure it into existence.
That they would pay for, obviously.
So the example that didn't work, I think is actually a really important one, was I was broadly curious about how does electricity get from plants to people's houses and buildings in this thing known as the grid. I knew nothing about the grid, but I was like, I bet that industry hasn't thought about innovating technology in decades. I bet there's like a huge opportunity, like toss AI as like a bunch of nodes in a graph. Can't you like optimize something, something, something? That would be pretty sweet for, you know, efficiency. That would probably be a really big GHG emission reduction. And I bet the, you know, people who send power, they don't like wasting power, do they? And so that was my assumption. And then the question is like, step 1, find people to talk to. So I learned like someone in my LinkedIn network like worked at PG&E, so I like reached out to them, took them to drinks, and I like grilled them about stuff. But then I was really looking to understand, would they pay to solve this problem? And so I found the right person at PG&E who like had some sort of like understanding what PG&E cared about. And I learned from that conversation that PG&E does not care at all about energy efficiency. They want less wildfires and fewer outages. And that's what they'll pay for. If you're gonna do something else, like good luck, right? And so as soon as I learned that wasn't like the P0 of these companies, I was like, all right, that one's out of the table. That one's like not worth pursuing. And this is worth focusing on because I know a lot of people who start a company and they hear this feedback and they learn that like their idea is like P4 at these, sorry, like 4th priority for these companies or something little like that. And they're like, yeah, okay, cool. So it's a priority, right? And then they go after it. But what you inevitably find is like you never get the dollars. You never get the company to actually pay you attention unless you find like their burden challenge. So that was an example where I didn't. I saw that I backed away from that problem. I looked somewhere else. Recycling is the opposite. So I again knew nothing about recycling when I started the company. I just started. In this case, I didn't know anybody who worked at any of these companies. I had no LinkedIn connections, so I just literally started calling like recycling facilities on Google Maps and asking to talk to their like plant operator. And like I would get past like the front desk like 1 out of 4 times, and I'd get past the voicemail another 1 out of 4 times. And every once in a while, I would get through to someone, and they'd be like, "Yes, hello." And like your pitch is really important. You have to make them like want to talk to you. But if you get that, then it's really about like understanding what their problems are. And so in this case, I had less of an idea of what I would do, but more of an understanding that this space was antiquated. And so I just got these guys and I was like, what is like, I'm just trying to research how recycling plants are. Like, what's hard for you? What is your struggle in your daily life or in your annual life? I did that. It was a lot of phone calling, but I got through like 12 to 15 different recycling facility guys. And started collecting data points. Okay, this person says that they're really struggling with the quality that they're receiving from their residents. this person says they're really struggling with labor. This person's really struggling with like securing the quality outbound from their facility, whatever. You collect all this data, and then all of a sudden a picture starts to emerge. And for me, that picture was labor. They're like, oh my God, I can't tell you how hard it is to find people to do the sortation job. It's so hard to hire people. And I heard that one again and again and again and again. And it was constantly, if not the top priority, the second priority, usually under safety. Like those two were like always up there. And so it became abundantly clear, hey, if I can help solve your labor problem, that's something you pay for. And I'd actually like asked them about that. I was like, hypothetically, if I made something that like took care of the labor problem, would it be something people want to pay for? Yeah. So
Oh, wondering how many interviews or plans
I probably-
facilities have you talked to, and what does that represent in brand spectrum?
good question. So at this point in time, not today, and in like this point in the story, I had probably cold called something like 50 and got in touch with something like a dozen to 2 dozen facilities. So quite a few. In the grand scheme of things, there are about 1,000 recycling facilities in the country. So it was a pretty small segment, but I made sure not to focus on a geo. So I wasn't like all in California. I was calling people in Maine, North Carolina, Illinois, like everywhere, because I didn't want to create advice there.
Also, it's good because you know that the problem is at least across the country, not
Yeah.
just in California.
Well, and also like you don't want to build a product that's just for this market. If I solved a California problem, I couldn't sell this thing in New York. My TAM is all of a sudden really tiny. Do you have a question?
I did, but
No, fair enough.
I guess I was wondering like how, like when did you start from waste and then go through like landfill, recycling, like composting, and then just try to figure out where you could implement technology? Like how did you kind of go through and figure out that this was an industry that stuff?
So within waste, recycling was actually the first thing I stuck my kind of finger into. But within climate, I mentioned PG&E and I mentioned recycling, but there were probably like 12 other spaces I like poked at to understand them. And each time I would find, most of the time it was that third bucket of like nobody would pay for this idea. I spent some time like researching desalinization. I'm particularly proud of this one because I found some paper online and I figured out that professor's email and I emailed her. And then we got on a phone call, and she was like, "Who are you?" But she very clearly explained to me like there was no market for improving technology here because again, they are not focused on the things that technology would bring. They're focused on like building more plants. They don't care about things. They just want to get these things up. And so I learned there many times in like many different sector climates. There's not people who would pay for this thing. So the question of like, okay, so I found some people who needed help with some problem. Why did I pick the robots? I guess like there's like an intuition here, right? Like if you Google or YouTube, I guess like how do recycling plants work? Like the first thing you see is oftentimes people sorting things. And if you think if you're like thinking about the future, that should just feel wrong. Like that's not how this possibly be operating in 20 years. So there's a gap that needs to get closed. And I think especially in the climate space, as you poke around, you're going to see a lot of that. And then, I mean, in the case of people sorting, well, like if it's not going to be people sorting, it has to be machine sorting, right? That's the future that I envisioned. And then as I was doing these interviews, I kind of like shifted the story. They would tell me labor was a problem. I'd say, oh, interesting. What do you think about robots, right? Because after the first call, I was like, oh, cool. They said labor was tough. Like, let me see what they. Oh, wow, yeah, that could probably be automated, couldn't it? And so over those calls, I would refine what I was pitching and get them a little more interested. And then you can kind of tell from how if they're pushing you to tell them more versus if you're trying to draw information out of them, that kind of gets a sense of like how interested are you really in this idea? And I got a lot of that positive sentiment out of the robots. Right.
Oh, I have a question about the geographic diversity.
Yeah.
In the southern part of the US, there's like not a ton of recycling happening right now. So I'm curious if those folks like what their engagement level was like.
I don't think I got in touch with anybody like below Tennessee and east of Louisiana. Like that I couldn't find many. And then I think the ones I did, I don't remember I don't have a log enforcement like who I talked to, or at least I didn't refresh it for this chat. But as might not surprise you, I tend to get calls with people in California, Washington, the Rust Belt, Northeast, places where recycling is a little more of a focus. It's a good point though, and it actually taught me pretty early that that market is going to be a later to adopt market, which is still true. Like we have deployments all over the country, but again, nobody in that section except we are talking about Florida. They're an exception.
I'm curious to learn more about your discovery process. Like when I conduct research, that's usually not open-ended. There's a set of common questions, and there's typically like a trying to be as unbiased as possible synthesis process. And the conversation's different, and the answers are different if they know I'm pitching something.
Yeah.
Like if I'm like on a sales call or giving a demo, and then also trying to get information about how they might see this in their workflow or what pain point they have in general, conversation's very different. So I guess how did you approach this discovery process, and how did those questions or process evolve, starting from much more open-ended to as you narrow down on this idea that you were ultimately.
I'll say if I can add one more to that. How did it change from early on to now as you do this?
Yeah. So in the earliest iteration, I tried to be unbiased, right? I just wanted to learn about these folks and their problems. And I mean that in two dimensions, either like over the span of a 30-minute call or over the span of like my 2-month research. Right? In both dimensions, I would try to be unbiased at the beginning and then focus in later. What's interesting about this space, and I think what I viewed my role in the recycling industry as was, you're the plant operator. I'm the tech guy, right? So you're not going to tell me what tech could be invented. You're going to tell me what tech exists. It's like that forward saying of like, they're going to want a faster horse. Like, I don't want to hear about your faster horse. I want to figure out what the car looks like for you. And so with that lens, you're the plant operator. I'm the tech guy. You're going to tell me your problem, and I'm going to propose to you the solution, not the other way around. Because I think one thing that always goes awry is you want your customer to tell you what to build, and then you get all sorts. They'll tell you something because they're just like dreaming things up that they wouldn't actually pay for, or you get a lot of like different answers and you don't know what to pick. So to give you an example, like that's going the opposite direction. Early on, this guy, his name is Ricky. He works down in San Jose, this plant called the Green Waste. Ricky was one of our earliest customers. And when we put our first robot in, he came over and he had like all of these ideas about it, right? He's like, oh, you know what you should do? Like we have these little suction cups on the end. He was like, instead of us having to go and switch the suction cups, what if the suction cups like change themselves and you have like a little PEZ dispenser of cups? And I was like, okay, like yeah, technically I could build that, but like the R&D cost, like the BOM cost in that would like, 50 or 100% X like cost of the robot. And in the back of my head, I know you're not willing to pay 2X the robot for a PEZ dispenser cup thing. And so they will have these ideas. And that's one of like 30 ideas I got from early customers and early calls, which I heard. And I was like, you're not the tech guy. I'm the tech guy. I'm going to tell you what tech is going to solve your problems. You're going to tell me your problems. I'm going to tell you what tech is going to solve it. And so drawing a line down there, if I'm going to be open-ended about what problems you're going to share with me, but I'm not really going to care about the solutions you share with me, especially in the early days, especially when you're trying to kind of step in and disrupt an industry. If you're going to go off of their solutions, they probably would have been invented by now. What you want to do is find stuff they don't think about. Does that make sense? Did I answer the question? And then I just to zip to yours, like what has changed? I mean, like I said, I'm fortunate or like skilled enough to not have had to make any major pivots, but that isn't to mean that we haven't taken a lot of feedback along the way. Fortunately, when I get feedback, I kind of like bucket it into one of several categories of R&D focus. So like I get feedback that the cups are annoying to change. And so that falls into this broad bucket of, okay, customers want the machine to be less painful to own. They just want to own it and not think about it. Let me like toss that one into this pool of category, and I'll hear, oh, cups are annoying, the hoses keep breaking, whatever. And I have like bucket number 1, maintainability. Bucket number 2, performance. Bucket number 3, installability, right? And I collect and put it into these buckets. Again, I'm not getting hyper attached to any specific thing, but I'm collecting themes around these things. And what I do with my team is I say, okay, cool, I've gotten all of this feedback. My hypothesis is that this bucket is the most important one to focus on to drive customer sentiments. And then we focus our energy on eradicating the issues in that bucket and turn our attention elsewhere. And so yeah, obviously an evolving product. We didn't get it perfect the first time, but we got it close enough. We take the feedback to kind of migrate the product to what we know they want based on what we heard.
So how do you kind of filter the feedback? How do you know that they are surfacing real feedback or not?
So this is, I'll give you the example of, so we have two products. We have the robot that sorts, and then we have these AI cameras. And the AI cameras, their job is to basically sit inside recycling facilities, count stuff that goes underneath it, bottle, can, cardboard, whatever, and then provide analytics. And we sell this to recycling facilities. We also want to sell this to producers, people like Coca-Cola and Amazon. These folks are ultimately, if you think about the big picture, the ones responsible for recycling. And legislation's coming along to actually push that to happen. And so you ask yourself, okay, I want to sell you something. And I bring this up because this is a corner of PMF we haven't quite cracked yet. Because if you go to someone like Coke, yes, in theory, they want specific features out of like the data set that they would want to use. But the bureaucracy that is Coca-Cola, the corporation that is Coca-Cola has one goal in mind, and that is sell more Coca-Cola. And so if you cannot, A, logically tie the feature you're building to that bottom line that they care about, you're going to be in trouble. But B, not only do you need to logically tie, but you also have to get the people on the inside to champion it. Right? So I can actually prove to Coke, you want this, like logically your business wants this data because it's good for your supply chain, that's going to help you stabilize your costs in the future when yada yada. But I go to like the head of sustainability, I'm like, this is why you wanted, and we have not yet found the right way to convince those folks that their business should pay money for this stuff. And so this is there. So I hear feedback from them. I want to speak to them. What if you gave us this thing? But until I can prove that building that feature would get you to champion and get dollars out of your, CFO's pocket into ours, I'm not going to invest. I'm very strict about what feedback I take at this point, especially because we have a built product at this point. And so if you're going to try to pivot my product direction, I need to have a lot more conviction from you and maybe even like written guarantees from you that if I build it, you will do something about it.
Maybe just one more question. Were there any features that you ended up dropping, like from product,
Features we ended up dropping.
or like maybe seriously considered that have built up?
I think the answer is no, but it's because of the way we approach adding features. Because there's such a rigorous gate to adding a feature, the ones we're dropping are the ones that never made it through, right? So we've gotten a lot of feature requests that we kick off to the side. We've built some things, I would say, that haven't been particularly useful, and so I wouldn't say it's been dropped, but like the engineering cost was pretty low. We thought it'd be fun, so we built it. And so maybe that's another twist on like features that should have been dropped. But there are certain things that, in my opinion, are worth building if the cost is low enough, because then you can at least like get it out there and start marketing it. But that's only if the cost is really like we have this like on our analytics dashboard, we have this like comparison tool that you look at like one period of time and another and like do some analytics. It costs us like 4 days of edge time to build, so like whatever. But I wouldn't do that for 4 months of edge time, right? You first.
How much do analyzing competitors contribute to your idea of if you have a good product? I remember I started a business and I was worried that I saw other people in the space, and I told my advisor, I don't think I should build this. And he said, well, it's actually a good sign that current competitors exist.
Yeah.
Do you conduct interviews with them? How do you use what they're doing to inform your own product?
Yeah. The answer is yes, very much so. When I started a company in 2019, there was one competitor on the scene. They had just released their first robot like that year, so they were like technically fresh, but they were 2 years ahead in the R&D curve than us. And because of that, I got to actually ask a lot of customers what they thought about those robots. There are a couple of them out there. And so what a blessing it is, especially in the hardware space, to have someone out there already who you can learn feedback from. Right. And so if you're building hardware, it's really, really beneficial. You can actually go out and say, okay, like, what do you not like about that robot? Why haven't you bought it yet? And that question, why haven't you bought it yet, is like so critical to designing something better in the hardware space. And the software space is tougher because it's like they can iterate really fast, and you might not have time to catch up in the hardware space. And that's why the climate, community is like maybe has a little more in common than with one another. You have time, and frankly, like that competitor, even though I did really basic research and understood what was wrong with their machine, and presumably they could have done the same, they never pivoted their design to look more like ours because it's just so hard to change course as a hardware company. So I did a lot of that. I do agree with your advisor. If there's competitors in the space, that probably means that there's good market in the space, and so it's a good reason to lean in. But ideally, what you do is you market your competitors to your customers that you're talking to, and say like, "What's wrong with these? Would you pay for them?" If they're like, "Yeah, I love that one," then like, okay, cool, you know what to chase. Or if you can find out what's wrong with them, that helps you differentiate yourself in markets.
Going back to like when you're talking about COVID and others, like what is there? So like you're actively talking about, like what is there? Is it related to like people or are they, regardless of policy, interested in trying to settle what is?
That's a difficult question to answer because it depends customer to customer. I can tell you Coke's, but it'll be different than Unilever's. It'll be different than Amazon's.
What one do you find?
The one that's most relevant to us, and this is now resuming really in tight to my space, is the people who are responding to EPR, extended producer responsibility. For those who are just curious what that means, it's the set of bills being passed at the state level, California, Washington, Minnesota, Maine, a couple others. The idea, like I said before, producers are ultimately responsible for recycling. And right now, the way the world works is the consumer we pay taxes, those taxes get funneled, or we pay the recycler, like Recology, money to pick up our bin. So we're footing the bill to like have their stuff taken care of properly. EPR is designed to flip that around. So the producer is the one paying for better recycling infrastructure, technology improvements, etc. It's trying to put the burden on them based on how much waste they are producing, or rather they are producing for us to consume. So there's a bunch of companies who are concerned about this because the math is kind of written on the wall. It's like, if you don't do anything, you're going to have to pay an additional hundreds of millions to billions of dollars annually in fees to these recycling grants systems. If you don't want to do that, you like got to get ahead of it. And how are you going to do that without intelligence? So that bucket of people, it's again an interesting product market fit challenge because we know there's my logical proof, right? I logically know exactly why this data is going to help you avoid fines in the future, and yet, do you think these companies are really thinking 2 years ahead in terms of sustainability trend? No, they're not. And so what you're looking for is like I gotta not only find like the logical tape, but I gotta find the champion inside the Coca-Cola who gets this and is actually willing to go to bat in their executive boardroom to get this on the agenda. And that's where you not only need to have product market fit, but you also have that like, I don't know, like political business savvy, right? Like exactly. A little double tricky prong there. Stop on you first.
Yeah, so I have a question about how did you this, you had the privilege or the advantage somehow that there was a competitor with a similar comparable product, so you could figure out what price